later. Then the rest of it. Okay, Eva, tell us a little bit about what you remember about your father and mother. Your father was Isidore Altman. Tell us what you remember about him and about
Mother
Lena.
was the oldest of the Glassman girls, Lena Glassman, and I was born at 1625 Washburn in my grandmother's house where my aunts and uncles lived. And Shirley and I were bathed together, they tell me. And let me tell you about my father. My father and mother met, but their marriage was a very short one because when she knew she was pregnant, very happy about it because she had been married before and had never been able to conceive. So when she did find that she was pregnant, she was overjoyed. Alas, before I was born, my father died. They tell me he died of a brain tumor.
Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit about what you know about his family.
All right. He was one of 7 brothers, and a number of them came to the United States, leaving their parents behind them. They settled in Pennsylvania, in Greensburg, Pennsylvania, and in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I had 2 uncles. I had one uncle in St. Louis. I had a couple of uncles who remained in Europe. And
where in Europe?
In Warsaw. They come from a little city near Warsaw, but grandparents had a jewelry store in Warsaw, and were fairly comfortable since they made the trip twice to the United States to see their children. And once they brought candlestick holders for every child.
Oh, so the grandparents never came here?
They never lived here, no.
I see.
No.
And then your dad, what did your father do before he died? What was his occupation?
He was a tailor and he worked for Hart, Schaffner and Marx.
I see. And then, so then he died of this brain tumor, and then mother...
After a few months, after I was about 6 months old, mother remarried. And she married Morris Kaufman, who was a widower and had one daughter, Rena. And after that, we had Ida, and a few years after that, Surrey.
How did your folks meet?
I don't know for sure, but I suspect it was through somebody.
Mm-hmm. Do you know where Morris Kaufman was from and what he did?
Yeah, he came from Kishinev. And he had come here in 1913 after the Kishinev massacre, a pogrom. Mm-hmm. And he was a fine tailor too, but when I was growing up, he had a stand on Maxwell Street where he sold slightly used clothing.
Okay. Well, about the loans?
Oh, sure. Every now and then he would run out of clothing to sell, and that we had to get at least $50 for him to get fresh clothing, and we would go to a family that weren't exactly related but were Lanslite. And it was the Kite family, and there were a number of adults who lived together, and they would take $1 from each adult at regular times and get a sum together which they would loan out without interest. And we would get a $50 loan, which we would pay back $1 a week. And it was my job to bring it to the Kite family every week.
What do you remember about growing up? What do you remember about your folks and
all right,
and your sisters?
Mm-hmm. Growing up was happy. My mother was always there, and that was wonderful. There was very, very little money. Getting the rent together was a major thing. But she had many people that she sewed for. She did originals. She made original garments. She also did. Let me see what they call that. Remodeling. And we had people coming into the house day and night. As a matter of fact, the only place you could go where nobody was the washroom. And I remember doing homework and studying in the washroom. And I had one drawer, which I redid every Sunday. And one of my jobs was to shine the parlor stove and the candlestick holders, which we had, which she saved for me, and which I hope someday to give to Leon and Mary Ann. We never wanted for affection. We had our aunts and uncles and cousins in the neighborhood that we could visit, and going to the grandparents was a Saturday jaunt. Every Saturday she would take us with 3 streetcars to visit grandmother and grandfather. And there were all the aunts and uncles, and cousins would drop in, and there was always a kichel, mon kichel, or tegelach, or something really good that we could eat.
Remember anything about Passovers?
Passover seders were so beautiful. I can't forget them. Zadie wore a white kaftan. The aunts and uncles walked around saying we should be quiet. They had the Seder, they went through it, they didn't miss a thing. By the time it came to dinner, we were all exhausted. And the kids had a table of their own, and we loved seeing our cousins. Our Feldman cousins were so happy to see us. They used to hide our hats so we'd stay later. They used to put them in the closet somewhere, and we had to dig for them. And we buddied up according to age. My affection and love for Shirley goes back so far that I can't even remember. And I don't know, except that the sisters had a lot of love for each other, would help each other a lot. My Tante Heike was very good to my mother. She would supplement for shoes. And I remember that one time I had a coat she didn't think was warm enough, and she got me a sweater to wear underneath. They were always presents. And my Aunt Mary was like a girlfriend. I loved her. And she used to take our clothes, my mother's clothes, and wash them. My mother used to wear Mickeys, cotton dresses that would tie in the back, and she would take them home and starch them and bring them back, and she would do that for curtains too. In those days they used to stretch them, and she'd bring them back. And she also would come around to show us how to keep house, because my mother never had a chance. The house was always clean, but I think she used to do it in the middle of the night. And I never saw her cook. And I know that we always had something to eat.
Mm-hmm. What do you remember about Uncle Ben and Aunt Gussie?
They didn't always live close, but they were around. My Uncle Benny was a cherished member of the family. His sisters really doted on him. Every time he came in, my mother rushed to get him food. What do I remember? I remember Norm and Ruthie were beautiful little girls. They were just a little bit younger, so they weren't so pals, but they were little cousins.
What do you remember anything about any outings with the Feldmans?
Oh, how could I forget? Every Sunday they would take us off my mother's hands. All 3 of us used to wait on the curb for your father to pick us up. And your mother would pack so much lunch. She had enough for 10 people, and probably more, because we packed into that 7-passenger Buick. And we would go to soccer games, we would go to picnics, we would, I don't know, he would take wherever they went, we went, and it was always a happy time. I remember Ida getting lost at a parade. They took us one Sunday to a parade, and we just kept going closer and closer and closer until all of a sudden we weren't there, and they were frantic. But pretty soon we showed up. Wouldn't be so good if you came home without a kid, you know.
How did you and Max, well, tell us a little bit about school. What schools did you go to, and then how did you meet Max?
I went to Gladstone School, to Holland, to Herzl Junior College, to Marshall High, and then when I got out of school, I was one of 3 out of 365 kids who got a job because my Uncle Feldman got me a job.
What did you do?
I worked for the Millinery Association, keeping their credit records straight and doing whatever little bookkeeping they had to do. But there wasn't that much to do because we were the association that wasn't the large association. There was the Midwest Millinery Association, and we were the renegade group, I guess you might call it. And I didn't have that much to do, but I would go to the library downtown and take 5 books out, and if I didn't have office work, I would read. And that was the first time I actually went downtown, is when I got the job. I was 16 and out of high school, but we weren't allowed to go downtown without an adult. So this was a whole new world for me, and I learned how to get around downtown, how to go through stores when it was raining, until I got to the bus. And then I started going to junior college at the JPI. It was $10 a course, but I had some kind of a little scholarship, I think, and I took 3 courses every quarter. And it was accredited, and I got credit for every course I took at that junior college. It was wonderful. Then I went on to Northwestern, and Max and I went together. Oh, Max. Max and I met through Wilma, our mutual friend. He was going to the junior college, and so was she. And he was a tall string bean, but a lot of fun. Wicked, I thought. And I guess he just liked the heavier girls, and he started coming around regularly, and we would go for long walks, and I just was crazy about him. And we had a large group of friends, and a club that met regularly. And after he got a little job on WPA in their writers group, we were married. And I was
What year was that?
1938, and I was 20, and he was 25.
How far had you been in your education at that point?
I had about 2 years of college, but every time a child went back to school, I went back to school. And but when Max died, I had over 3 years, but I had it in, I just took literature courses. I took accounting. I had something like 7 accounting courses. I didn't go along a certain course of study. But after he died, I got down to business and had my credits evaluated, got credits from 5 or 6 different schools. I had gone to Herzl Junior College and Austin Junior College, and well, when they got them together, they figured out that I had 3 years, close to 3 years. Then I started taking courses on the television. And then when I could take no more courses on television or at night, then I made a big decision to quit work for a year and go back to school and finish up. And that I nearly went out of my mind making that decision, but because I felt as if I was taking it away from my kids. You know, I had that year that I took off.
Okay. Eve, tell us a little bit about Max and Max's family.
Max was one of 4 brothers, and they were all very sweet family men. He was a generation apart from the next brother because he was a change-of-life baby, and my mother-in-law was 46 when she gave birth to him and nursed him and carried him on her back in Europe so he would have something to eat.
Was he born there?
He was born there, and he came here when he was 8. He was born in no, I can't even pronounce the little city.
Can you spell it?
No.
Where was it?
I think it was in Poland. Mm-hmm. And when he came here, he was 8 years old and bright, because in no time at all he was caught up with his age group, and when he was in junior high school, he was in the accelerated group. And big reader, and one of the things that we had in common, and which leads me to the kids, because wherever I go, my kids are taking me to a library.
Did you know your father-in-law?
No.
When did he die?
He died before I was married, and Les is named after him.
I see. And you knew your mother-in-law?
Yeah, she lived with us for 13 years, from the time we were married until the time she passed away.
I see.
You lived in a small place?
6 people in 4 rooms.
What about Max's brothers?
Max's brothers were very nice men. They used to come to see their mother. They had a lot of family feeling, and they treated their children with great kindness. I'm sorry I don't see too many of them, but I do hear from them now and then.
Mm-hmm. Why did your mother-in-law stay with you?
He was the youngest. He was her baby. Oh.
How did you remember how Dave and Ida met?
Dave and Ida met, I'm sure, through friends. Ida had many boyfriends, very nice boyfriends. Ida was a beautiful, beautiful young woman, very impatient because she didn't even wait to finish high school. She wanted to get to work. And she, in her own way, I really feel Ida was a genius, because when we took classes together, she didn't even take notes, and she knew everything that was happening. She was a great reader. She was a wonderful sister. It was like having when my mother died, Ida was my mother. And now Siri is. Siri, who calls me every day at 10 after 7 and gives me a weather report, tells me what to wear, that I should be careful. And if she doesn't call at 10 after 7, I start checking all the 4 telephones because I get worried about her. It's wonderful to have sisters. And Rena was a wonderful sister. We weren't blood sisters, but we had very tender feelings for her. And I have great love for Rena's children, whom I see regularly.
You remember much about Morris Kaufman? Besides that he was from Kishinev and had been in the Taylor?
Well, he was...
Did he have any family?
I think he had family. But I remember the day that he heard that got a letter that his father died, and how he cried.
Or his father died over there?
Yeah.
You don't know too much about them?
No, the Pa wrote a good letter. The Pa was educated. Mm-hmm. He had a facility for languages, and he was well read for a man his age and times. Mm-hmm. And he used to read
Was he a lot older than your mother?
He must have been 13 to 15 years older, yes. And when he died, he was about 84, 85. Yeah. But he was lucky that he had very devoted daughters because he lived with Suri. Suri and Eddie slept on a folding bed. The pa had a bedroom. And when he lived with Ida, he got great respect. He was always spotless. And he was very neat.
What about Mother? Now, Mother died, she was fairly young.
I think she was 52. She had diabetes for many years and heart trouble, and she continued to work. But working was a social thing for her too, because so many people came in to talk with her, and she had so many friends. When I would walk with her down Roosevelt Road, she would stop 28 times, just 4 blocks, I think. I used to get very impatient, but now I realize she just was that kind of a woman, knew everybody.
Do you remember anything about, do you remember Hinda and Eddie of the Blender, and do you remember any of that family?
Yes, I remember, what was his name, the Blender?
Steinman.
Steinman, the Blender, lived across the street with his children. What I remember about them is that there was a smell of wine there all the time. I think he used to brew his own, but they were very nice people, and they were loving people. They all would often come and sit with my mother. There was an Eddie there that my mother was especially fond of. Eddie the Ganef. Yeah. Hindle lived close to us and would come in, and sometimes she would prepare food come in and scrape some vegetables, or they acted like good cousins. Rivka I didn't see too much, but Hindle and Mendel would come over often. And then Rose Shapiro used to come all the time.
You're talking about Hindle and Mendel Ruthman.
Ruthman, right. And then Rose Shapiro and Joe would come over all the time. I remember them knocking in the middle of the night one time to get some help with money because Cy broke an arm. All those boys broke something. They were the personality boys. And since we were all so poor together, if something like that happened, a real emergency, they would just come and we would help. I loved Rose Shapiro. She was good for 27 shirts. When I would iron, I would call her, and I could finish off every shirt in the house before I would finish. She was very bright. She was way ahead. She knew about contraception, and in those days, that was very interesting. I just crazy about her. And even now, every time I get a little note from home from the Jewish blind, I always send something in her name.
She was blind at the end. Is that
I don't think she was blind. I think she was. She was doing fine until Cy died, and then she just fell apart. I used to visit Joe in the home too.
Oh, was it Cy or his wife? Peggy was blind.
Peggy lost her vision. Rose Shapiro was great. She and Joe were wonderful. They still kept house together until almost the very end. And he'd say to me, "I'm so old and I'm so tired, and she's sending me for onions."
Eva's talking a little bit about her mother, and go ahead.
Okay. I remember my mother as having a million friends and keeping everybody who came into the house happy with her stories.
What kind of stories? Can you remember any?
She used to tell me stories about how she was on the ship and she had ship sisters, and there was one ship sister, Rose. Throughout my entire growing up, she wanted to see that ship sister who moved to Cincinnati. And I'd always say, "Can't you go?" And there was never the right time for her to go.
What other kind of stories would she tell?
She would tell stories about Ditkovich, her little village.
What do you remember of any of those stories?
Oh, I remember a lot of them because she was early apprenticed. She was 6 years old and she was in somebody else's house learning how to sew. And on Fridays she used to wash the floors for the woman that she worked for. I thought that was kind of sad because the other, my Aunt Ida and my Aunt Mary were home with them. They didn't send them out to be apprenticed. And she would sit but she never worked in a factory because she wanted to be with us. And
what about
Dave, your foot is on you.
no, that's all right. He can do that. We'll play footsie.
what
Yeah.
what other stories did Mother tell you about her growing up in Ditkovich?
Well, it was a very small village, and the men were pampered, I guess, and the women did a lot of did all the heavy work while the men studied, and that was their way of life. But my mother, when she was apprenticed with other young girls, and I guess she must have had a lot of girlfriends, and they sang and danced, but it didn't take long because she was married at 14. And she would often sew even at night. And we had 2 bedrooms, and one bedroom were for my mother and father, and one for Suri and Ida. And I slept in a folding bed near her sewing machine, so I would hear the last songs before I went to sleep.
Sing some of the songs that you remember.
Do you want me to sing that little one that I sang before? The one that I remember. Ich lebe dein Gottesnamen, für jeden Kind besinder, hilf abgezahlte Gebes und gassene gemachte Kinder.
Do you remember any other songs?
She had a stepmother song. No, it wasn't a stepmother song. It was a mother-in-law song.
What was that?
But what was it about? She wasn't a very good mother-in-law. She'd say, "What do you need her for? She doesn't cook and she doesn't sew and she doesn't sweep your room for you. And why should you be with her?" No, I'd rather not think about that kind of a mother-in-law.
Well, she had a great sense of humor. She
terrific.
reminded me of Taffy the milkman.
You know. And what's more, I never heard any swear words in the house, certainly no English ones. And I was a mature woman before I knew that some of the stories she told were really wicked. She had some words that I never could repeat. She was funny.
You mean, were these in Yiddish?
In Yiddish, and I enjoyed the Yiddish. And when I would go to California to visit my aunt and uncle Feldman and my aunt and uncle Abrams, I would wait for them to talk Yiddish to me and call me by my Yiddish name. I enjoyed that. It was fun.
Mother-in-law didn't tell any stories about you.
No?
What?
I was going to say that I often wondered why she was apprenticed so early, at 6 years old. Goodness. But it's quite possible that they were a big family and they just didn't have enough to eat.
How much older was your mother than my mother?
Just 2 years.
Was it only 2 years?
I think they were just 2 years apart. Mary was quite a bit younger. But Mary was, the kid sister. She was the one that washed diapers for my mother, for her sister Ida. When the baby was born, they would put her to work. But I don't know. I just felt my mother had such a hard life.
She did.
Why did she come over to this country first?
She came. Why did she come? I wonder if she came with a young husband. No, I don't know. I really don't remember. But
what?
Was she married in the old country or married?
Yes, she was just 14 when she was married.
And how old was
she? And I don't know how old he was, but they were married 10 full years. And then, according to the law, they were divorced because they had no children. And I think her time with my father was a happy one. He was intelligent, educated, and she spoke very kindly about the Altmans, the Nattenbergs, and they didn't forget her. From time to time, they would come to visit. They would come to see her.
Who are the Nattenbergs?
Our cousins. The Altmans, the Nattenbergs are cousins, and there's some intermarriage. Some Altmans married Nattenbergs. Yeah.
Yes.
So, but I still see them, and I still belong to a family club. And one of the things I really loved was our Glassman family club. At least we get to see each other at regular intervals, and now that I look back, I guess what kept us all together was the monthly poker game. But it was nice to see the aunts and the uncles and the kids.
You don't know why your mother and
Tell us.
When they came on the boat, they came steerage, and she suffered terribly. But I know that they came with pillows. What else did she say she brought? Candlestick holders, pillows. But when she left, she said that she was going to get them over, and she did. Everybody was working for a ship cart. What is that? It's a ship ticket. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And she was overjoyed when her parents came. But that interval that she was separated from her parents, and I don't know, I always felt that they were partial to Benny and maybe other children. But, I don't know, I can't say. I don't want to say it.
Well,
I always felt that she had a rough deal. She worked forever.
yes.
I can't remember her ever not working. She was absolutely beautiful. Want me to tell you that?
Sure.
When we were invited to a wedding, she would take us all, and we would all go in a cab. She used to call herself a Verscheitenkapsen. And they tell me that when she went to Norma's wedding, the rest of us weren't invited, that she was just beautiful. That was good. My Aunt Betty was something else.
Isidore was divorced from Betty before he married your mother.
Right. And I tell you, my mother
Were there
and
other children besides Helen?
no other children besides Helen, but my Aunt Betty, I called her my Aunt Betty. Actually, she was kind of a cousin, I think. She used to come with Helen to see my mother all the time. They were great friends. And Helen was kind of a sickly child. In those days, they thought you might have TB if you were thin, and they would send her to a camp an open-air camp. And her mother had no one to leave Helen with, so Helen lived with all the cousins, all the aunts. She went from home to home. It was so sad. But when she grew up and she finished high school and got herself a job, she did well. She was a government girl and had a little pension by the end. And she and Aunt Betty lived very nicely. They liked a nice address. And toward the last, when they moved to Leisure World, her world opened up for her. And after Aunt Betty passed away, she met a nice man. He was a lawyer, CPA, and they were married, and they lived very happily for 6 years. And when I would come to visit them, I was overjoyed. Table, when my Zadie was...
Say that again.
Women...
Your mother...
Women didn't get an education in those days. Only... Benny went to Hebrew school, I suppose. Maybe my Zadie taught him. But my mother learned because she sat under the table while my Zadie was teaching the boys that he took care of, when he was a Hebrew teacher. She never had any education, except that they, taught her how to be a seamstress.
Yes.
Many people who came over went to night school to learn English, and my mother never went. They never encouraged her. Aunt Mary only had 1 year of high school, And in Arlene's treasures, there's a little, I think it's some kind of receipt that Aunt Mary took some kind of a typing course at a high school at night. Now, Mary was so young, she could have gone on to high school. Many people who came went on not only to high school, but to college. I guess our family just didn't believe in it.
Yeah,
I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, that's right. I think the there was a definite tendency for the boys. I don't know how far did Ben go? He didn't go to college?
If Ben would have gone to be a rabbi, they would have sent him. But the fact that he wanted a secular education didn't sit so well with Zadie. And that was it. And they sent him right to work. They sent Mary to work, you know, when they worked for your father, who employed everybody.
That's right. I think just about everybody.
Everybody in the family worked for Uncle Alec in one way or another. Pressers, makers, everything, shippers, everybody worked for your father. And he was a great guy. And she, kept a fairly kosher house and changed her dishes for Pesach. But on Saturday, she had her Saturday work. I have bags. She had pekla. She used to put things together all day on Saturday, except when she used to take me to the clinic. She used to take me to Michael Reese Clinic because I had a sinus thing. That poor woman, she worked 6.5 or 7 days a week, and then she would take me on 3 buses to Michael Reese so I could get attention. And we sit for hours there. But she didn't really mind it so much because she always found somebody to talk to while we were waiting for the records to come up. She knew more people, and of course everybody was so poor that 50 cents for the doctor at the time was big stuff, and that's where I got my first pair of glasses, at a clinic.
We went to the clinic ourselves.
Oh, sure.
For a while.
No, but as long as I can remember, we were never allowed to have an animal in the house because the story was that a sister and a brother were bitten by a dog and they both died. And I used to say, how old were they? She says, they were hipshe kinder. That means they were either 5 or 6 or something like
2
that.
or 3.
Yeah.
My mother would always cross the street when she saw a dog coming.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. And I hate to say it, but I don't have much feeling for dogs. I would like to. I think they're cute. Sometimes when you see them running through the street and you say, oh, what a beautiful dog. The people who are leading the dogs are so thrilled. It's like a child. But I don't have that feeling. I like kids. So finally I got so tired of it, I said, let's release it. So, you know that...
He was talking about the turtle.
That large turtle went right to the lake. It smelled water and went right to the lake. Oh, the kids used to bring home women, everything.
Women, turtles?
Women, turtles, everything. My boys each had a girlfriend that they went with before they met the girls they married. And we always had girls around. I used to step over the boys. They had boys laying all over the house. And I remember one kid, when he was working at a restaurant, talked me into buying 5 pounds of hamburger patties for emergencies. And all of a sudden there were emergencies all over the place. Day and night they were bringing boys home until every emergency patty was gone. We had a lot of fun. I always invited their kids in because I remember my Uncle Alex said, you got to know your kids' friends. And I did. Every boy had buddies and every kid was welcome. I fed so many kids that I didn't mind. I think the mothers who used to get rid of their kids missed out. I felt I enjoyed these kids. And I think I would love to keep working. I just like to see how children think. But I don't know, it's getting so hard now. So, I'm going to have to retire one of these days. Besides, for a while there I couldn't talk. So everything has sort of come back. I feel comfortable, and I give them their money's worth at school. Give them their money's worth. I had learned how to play a piano. It's so important. You never forget. At least you never forget to read notes. I used to envy the Feldman kids. Shirley still plays. Shirley's so modest you don't know. But she says that's one of the things she's going to do when she retires is play the piano. Now, Han, I didn't know that well. I have loving feelings for her because we had kids together. I remember us meeting Han at Grant Park and bringing chicken sandwiches because we couldn't afford anything else. And we used to meet with our kids and have a little picnic on Grant Park. And Han doesn't come through in a letter. It's just a quick note. But in person, it's fun. I like Harry. I'm disappointed because when Barbara comes to town, she doesn't call. But Shirley says she's had a very rough time lately. So maybe she's coming out of it now. I hope. Peggy lives in my school neighborhood. So I made it my business to be there for the bris. And from time to time I visit. And yes, I like Peggy a lot. And I like Don. And I see her more than I, do the other girls. Yeah. DeBoris used to be a social worker down the block here at Angel Guardian. She used to drop in. We used to exchange books once in a while. I would loan her some books. I like to keep in touch with everybody, if I could. I write to everybody who answers, and some people who don't answer. I just enjoy writing letters.
I told you that if you wrote, I would answer.
Yeah. I have some good letters around. I still write to some of the people that I met in Paris.
Oh, tell us a little bit about that Paris incident again.
Well, it's winding down now. They made an offer in francs, and I don't care what it is. I didn't care what it was. I just signed it. Because it's going on so long.
That was 2 years ago?
That was 2 years ago, yeah.
Tell us what you remember about the incident.
I had been going to the museum, and we were carrying around a letter from Carrie, and in that letter he had told us exactly where to go, when to go, and every day would be accounted for. And when we finished that museum, the letter said go somewhere else, but Grace was hungry. So we decided to go back to that Jewish restaurant, the Golden Sun restaurant, and we sat at a very small table. It was about 2 feet diameter, a round table, and she ordered something and I did, and we were just nibbling on it, and we decided we were going to take the rest with us when we heard some sounds and somebody said, "It's a grenade, get on the floor." And that was the last time I saw Grace. I can just see her with her glasses. And I was on the floor bleeding, and I kept saying, "I need an ambulance." And after that, I don't remember very much because I was in an ambulance with life-saving equipment. And after that, I remember being somewhere where I kept asking where my purse was, where my passport was, where have they told my children what happened to Grace. I kept begging them to tell me what happened to Grace because Grace had a heart condition, and I always felt responsible for her when I was traveling with her, and I would walk at her pace. And so...
Well, then Leon and Marianne came in to see you.
Well, after I was in intensive care for a long time, and they kept saying, "Madame, don't worry." I looked up and I saw my friends, my teaching friends who had gone with me on this trip, and they held up a sign that said, "Love and Hope." And that's all I can remember there. Then, after I was in a private room with somebody was with me all the time. I don't know if it was intensive care or not, but somebody touched my arm and said, Madame, your children are coming. And I must have been very happy with that, because in a day or so they showed up, and Marianne leaned down and said to me, how are you? And I said, Marianne, you came and must have cost a fortune. I'll pay you for it. And she said, oh God, she's going to be all right, you know. And after that, you know, I had wonderful care. My nurse was a third-year medical student, very lovely girl. We practiced her English all the time. When I got home, I sent her an emblem of a physician in gold, but I never heard from her. I hope she got it. And she used to spend a lot of time. She went out of her way to, toward the end of the 19 days, she took me in a wheelchair to get some fresh air. The building, the hospital was around a court. It was at one time an old people's home connected with a church. But I was in the new wing, was spotless and beautiful.
How long were you in the hospital?
19 days. 19 days.
Do you remember seeing Mitterrand when he came?
No. But, you know, the doctors used to come around with their entourage, and all the doctors spoke English. And one brought me the New York Times every day, or the Washington Post. They were just wonderful. And they said, Madame, you have to have courage and patience. Well, courage I could muster up once in a while, but patience I didn't have. Every day I was yelling, I want to go home. But I broke all the records for mail in the hospital. I have a ton of mail in the basement. Everybody wrote. I had marvelous visitors. The chief rabbi of France and his magnificent